So here we are. It's been a minute since we've delved into a mystery. You're asking yourself, more deaths? Really? Haven't you had enough TMN? Well, no. But the story is intriguing beyond the deaths themselves. We've got spiritualism. We've got our favorite city of the big shoulders, Chicago. We've got 6 deaths. We've got poison. We've got lies and perjury. We've got accusations. We've got the judicial system gone bonkers. We've got hanging. Wait, no, not hanging. Wait, hanging? The pleadings of a child, the raging of a holy man, and boo, 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 wedding. We've got it all, kids. Belt yourselves in for a humdinger of a story. We're looking at the Vrzal family who lived in Chicago. In a period of 9 months, there had been 6 deaths in this one family. The proverbial icing on this case was the death of the 6th member in early December 1906, one Mrs. Rose Vrzal, who has already lost her husband and 4 children, and now she herself has allegedly taken her own life. Theories? Yes, chickadees, we always have to start with theories. The police have 2. Inspector Shippey, love the name, has found out about a feud between Mrs. Vrzal and one of her relatives. Apparently, Mrs. Vrzal had told this relative that she would not leave any money to this person. How would a conversation like that start to begin with? And secondly, our awesomely named inspector says he has evidence relating to a bit of a hanky-panky with a man who wanted to marry her when she's already married. Again, this is about December 5th, 1906. We're waiting on coroner physician Lukey to finish his postmortem on Mrs. Vrzal. And Coroner Hoffman, welcome back old friend from previous episodes, and the inspector will go to court to request exhumation of Ella Vrzal, the last Vrzal child to have passed away. And we're assuming that at some point the husband and other daughters will also be exhumed. The question before us, were they poisoned with arsenic? So we're going to hop, skip, jump to a couple of weeks later, around December 18th, 1906. We have someone in jail. One Herman Billik, fortune teller, has been charged in giving poison to the Vrzal family so that Mrs. Rose Vrzal, the mom/wife, could collect insurance money. Remember, we just discovered Mrs. Vrzal dead a couple of weeks ago. They thought she had taken her own life, but police think that she's also been poisoned, just like her children. Professor Walter Haynes, another old friend of this channel, and Coroner Lukey have found the presence of poison in Ella and Mary, 2 of Mrs. Vrzal's daughters. Arsenic was found in their livers and stomachs, enough of it to have caused their untimely deaths. Coroner Hoffman wants to exhume the remaining family members to check for poison as well. We saw that one coming a mile away. We're not new to this scene. December 20th, 1906. Poison now found in 3 of the children. Inspector Shippey found that Herman Billik, still in jail, received $3,000 from a Mrs. Standish York a few days after the death of her husband. Huh? Yeah. Standish York died in Cleveland in 1898 and has $22,000 in life insurance. Herman got $3,000 of that. Inspectors looking for Mrs. York's sister to find out Mrs. York's whereabouts. Standish York's doctors at that time had even declared his death unusual and suspicious. Oy vey. December 27th, 1906. Herman Billik, again still jailed, has now gone before the municipal court for a preliminary hearing. He says he's innocent, but he will probably be charged with first-degree murder. Allegedly, Mrs. Rose Vrzal, mom/wife, was said to be insanely infatuated with Herman the hypnotist, and he helped her get a little of that insurance money dough. So let's take a look at our victims. The dates may not be exact, depends on the news source. So we have Martin Vrzal, husband and father, 47 years old, was the first to die on March 26, 1905. He was a dairyman, doing well, and had a good family life. His life was insured for $2,000. Mary Vrzal, daughter, 22 years old, died July 27, 1905. Her life was insured for $800. Tilly Vrzal, daughter, she was either 18 or 20, died December 22, 1905. Life was insured for $620. Rose, daughter, age 14, died August 30th, 1906. She was insured for $300. Ella, daughter, age 12, died November 30th, 1906. She was insured for $105. And finally, Mrs. Rose Vrzal, mother, wife, age 45, still said to have taken her own life on December 4th, 1906, shortly after police started their investigation. She was insured for $3,000. Surviving members: Emma Vrzal Niemann, the eldest daughter, and her 2 children. And it seems from later news articles that there was also a son named Jerry and a daughter named Bertha who were still alive. So who is this person in jail, Herman Billik? He came to the U.S. in 1886 from Bohemia. He arrived in Chicago from Cleveland around 1903 with his wife, children, and his mother, Barbara, who also dabbled in the fortune-telling, and supposedly his wife does it also. Herman is about 40 years old, speaks 3 languages. Billik's move to Chicago brought him into the same neighborhood as the Vrzals. From the Pine Bluff Daily Graphic, December 27, 1906. Quote, "From the day the hypnotist first cast his beady eyes upon the comely wife of the dairyman, the house of Vrzal became the abode of mystery and death." End quote. However, everyone in the Vrzal family found Herman Billik interesting. Fortune teller? Yeah. Bring your crystal ball and cards over. We'll provide the snacks. Herman ingratiated himself into the family by telling Martin that a rival milk vendor was his enemy and that Herman could cast a spell to keep Martin from harm. Martin said, "Sure." Herman brewed up a concoction, cast it onto the ground, I'm assuming in the direction of the rival milk vendor. It was only about a week of his visits when Mrs. Vrzal became seemingly enamored over Herman's black magic. Martin, the husband, seemed either oblivious or wasn't concerned, even when things started to turn scandalous. Martin apparently let Herman borrow hundreds of dollars, or let's say loaned, in that Martin gave Herman money for things like casting a potion on the rival milk vendor, leaving Martin with little left. And once the funds had run out, allegedly Herman decided it was time to cash in on the bigger dough, life insurance. We're still exhuming bodies, doing some tests, and yeah, Martin, husband/father, has been found to have had sufficient quantities of poison in his stomach to have caused his death, along with all 4 daughters. Herman admitted that he had dosed the father, but only with harmless medicines. Oh, really? Welcome to 1907. It's January, and a coroner's jury has found Herman responsible for the deaths of Mary, Ella, and Rose, 3 of the children. He is charged with assisting their mother in order to get their life insurance. At the inquest, someone tried to pull a Jack Ruby on Billik and attacked him, striking him over the head. Apparently, the man's wife had been swindled out of jewels. By Herman? Or was this just a random, I'm ticked and I'm going to beat anybody up? We don't know. So beyond that, the first half of 1907 is fairly quiet. Everything seems a bit normal, a bit mundane. Yeah? Well, July 3rd, 1907, 5 of the jurors picked for Billik's trial had become mysteriously ill, baffling doctors. Some believe that Herman the hypnotist is the cause of it. As court began, 2 of the jurors rushed into court and begged to be let go, exhibiting signs of hysteria. A 3rd juror was questioned by Judge Barnes and could only respond, "I feel dizzy." When he was excused, he fell to the ground in front of Billik, who smiled grimly. People believe the voodoo doctor is the cause of these issues. July 20th, 1907. Herman has been found guilty of poisoning 20-year-old Mary Vrzal with arsenic. He was sentenced to death, which will be by hanging. In total, he has been indicted with 5 deaths. This is the first case to be tried, although it's fairly assumed by everyone that he will be found guilty of all of them if he was found guilty of this one. He was standing near the jury box when the verdict was read. Apparently, he had to put a hand on a pillar for support, and after that, he was taken to jail. His daughter, Edna, made a bit of a scene. I think she's around 10 years old, so fair. She can do that. "They've deaded him," was her declaration. Herman said, quote, "I am to be hanged because I had no money to hire influential lawyers. I'm a Bohemian and a soldier, and I am not afraid to die. I have no money to get a new trial, but they won't succeed. All I can do is wait the end. Pray to my God to forgive me for any wrong that I may have done. My little daughter Edna will be a nun. I have raised her in the church." End quote. Odd statement to make, right? Anywho, stick a push pin in Edna's name. You'll need it later. August 1907, Herman set to hang October 11th, 1907 for the death of Mary Vrzal. August 9th, Herman's been in the Cook County Jail waiting for something to happen, either his death by hanging or a new trial. Judge Barnes is considering the new motion. Herman's wife said, quote, "If I could tell what I know, things that now seem strange would be explained. I know my husband is not guilty, but the law prevents me from testifying. If he were guilty, I would not lift a finger to protect him, for I believe in a life for a life." End quote. So, no hanging for October 11th. Hello, reprieve. November 6, 1907. So, another death. What? Yeah. Remember, the Vrzals had an older daughter named Emma, who was married with 2 children. Her last name is Niemann. Well, her husband is now dead. He just happened to have been a state's chief witness in the Billik case. Obviously, it's not Billik himself that did anything directly, as Billik is in jail. But could it have been someone else who wants Billik freed? The coroner has ordered an investigation. February 22nd, 1908. Are you bored? Billik is now supposed to be hanged on March 20th. A sworn confession has been given to one Father P.J. O'Callahan from one Jerry M. Vrzal, aged 18. O'Callahan, he's called either Father or Reverend, so we're going to go with Father. Jerry was one of the last remaining Vrzal children who had given testimony that led to the death sentence for Herman. Well, Jerry's doing a little backtracking. He has quashed his own testimony, declaring it to be perjury, and also said that the testimony of 2 of Jerry's relatives was also false. One of those would turn out to be his oldest sister, Emma Vrzal Niemann. The testimony Jerry had provided was, according to him, coached to him by a high police official and an assistant state's attorney. Jerry said in his affidavit that a police official had threatened Jerry with a murder charge unless he did what the police wanted. The story he had told on the stand, given to him by the assistant state's attorney. The police inspector had summoned him for questioning at least 50 times, and each of these summoning lasted about 2 hours. Father O'Callahan has long believed in Herman's innocence ever since during one of his visits to jail that a sister Rose asked him to interest himself in Herman because the sister felt Herman was innocent. Father O'Callahan said, quote, "The beginning of my interest dates from last spring. In one of my frequent visits to the county jail, I met Sister Rose, who asked me to interest myself in a prisoner named Billik. She said that he was there through charge of murder, but she knew he was an innocent man. I said I had so many calls upon my time and sympathy that I did not feel I could do anything for the man. At any rate, I said, he was a fortune teller. She answered, but he should not hang for being such. I told her I thought the judge and jury would do him justice. To my astonishment, he was convicted, and I felt that I had neglected the cause of an innocent man. Behind all the incidentals were the prayers of a devoted man who first assured me of Billik's innocence and the prayers of the sisters who were called the Poor Clares. Sister Rose of Columbia Hospital, an institution of the Italian Order of the Missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart, is the nun referred to. It was she who converted the car barn bandit Gustav Marx, who was executed with Nina Meyer and Van Dyne, the only one of the celebrated trio who died a Christian." End quote. Whoa, Nelly. Well, the Illinois Supreme Court affirmed the already laid out judgment, so nothing other than a pardon from our old story friend, Governor Dineen, will save Herman now. March 19, 1908. March 20th, still fixed for his execution. Pleas for executive clemency have been requested based on the perjurious testimony of Jerry Vrzal. April 19th, 1908. Well, clemency has been given for the time being, so no hanging March 20th. But now if it's not extended, he will be hanged the following week. Herman's daughter, Edna, the so-called child of sorrow, according to some newspapers, hopes that Governor Dineen will pardon. Edna said, quote, "I am certain that good man will not let Papa die," end quote. She apparently saw the governor, greeted him with a smile and handshake, rushed at him with outstretched arms. Quote, "Oh, governor, governor, save my dad," end quote. Apparently, she wrote Governor Dineen's daughter a letter too. Quote, "Dear little friend, won't you please ask your papa to save my poor dear papa? I love my papa just as you love your papa, and he is to die on Friday. Please help my papa, and I will pray for you and your papa. Edna Billik." End quote. It's none of my business what happened to her later in life, but she should have gone into a field that required a lot of moxie and go-get-'em attitude. The governor and the pardon board are listening to witnesses and plan to convene late into the evening to discuss the case. Jerry Vrzal was one of the witnesses. Quote, "I lied. There was practically nothing of truth in my story. I have no reason to think that Billik murdered any members of my family. I don't know why I did this except that I was scared of the police and of the state's attorney and imagined things were true after they were suggested to me." End quote. June 12, 1908. Herman has been granted a stay of execution until he has been allowed to appeal his case in front of the Illinois Supreme Court. So let's review his dates of hanging, shall we? October 11th, 1907, November 8th, 1907, April 29th, 1908. Postponements each time to allow for further investigation. The state Supreme Court refused a hearing, the State Board of Pardons refused to interfere, Federal Judge Landis refused a writ of habeas corpus, but mass meetings held by Father O'Callahan and attended by Herman's daughter resulted in a volunteer delegation to Governor Dineen in Springfield to speak directly to the governor. On June 12th, Judge Landis stated when he opened court, quote, "I desire the state to inform the sheriff not to execute the sentence until he has heard from this court." End quote. Judge Landis decided that he had not the discretion to deny the application for an appeal to the Supreme Court. He therefore issued an order granting a delay until the matter could be passed upon at Washington. Washington, you say? Yeah, we're going to the U.S. Supreme Court. So as already mentioned, no execution today. Are we at 9 lives yet? The man has quite a following of ardent supporters, those fighting for him to be freed. Even his fellow prisoners prayed that he would be spared from the hangman's noose. So, if you know some stuff, you're probably wondering, hey, isn't it not allowed for a priest to reveal a confession? Yeah, well, you're not normally supposed to. However, remember that the accused was a man that the priest had been fighting for, and here was a confession exonerating a man who was sentenced to death. Father O'Callahan raised the $1,500 needed to take the case to a higher court, raising contributions by asking for help from the medical and legal professions, businessmen, general public. Once the state Supreme Court could take up the appeal with the money raised, that's when the father said he had knowledge of the proof that Herman was innocent and that the information had been obtained by a confessional. Well, remember that the state Supreme Court was like, meh, no new trial. Well, that's when the father sprung the affidavit of Jerry. Affidavit of Jerry said, quote, "My conscience will not permit me to rest until I have done everything in my power to correct the wrong I have done. I want to take back everything false that I have said, and I want Herman Billik to be free because he is innocent." End quote. The father would not make it known who had confessed. He declared in a written statement accompanying the publication of the boy's affidavit that, quote, "Evidence such as this could be used only at a new trial, but could not be presented to the Supreme Court. And I have seen no occasion for either Jerry or myself giving utterance to the awful truth." End quote. And he would not explain the, quote, "awful truth," end quote. Father O'Callahan said, quote, "If conscience had not spoken, justice could not be done," end quote. So with all that, the rehearing came up before the state Supreme Court in March 1908. They refused to interfere, granted a reprieve until June 12th, but felt the sentence should be carried out. Father had his mass meetings day and night, and when the volunteer party went to Springfield to make an appeal to governor, spending money to travel out of their own pockets, Judge Landis' stay of execution and authorization for the case to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. July 31st, 1908. You may want to press pause, take a bathroom break, grab a snack. Father O'Callahan, well, he served up an interesting cup of tea. He apparently has his own theory, accusing Emma Vrzal Neiman, oldest daughter, of being the murderess. What? This is how he thinks he will save Herman. Emma, who has not been indicted, has not even been looked into with much in the way of suspicion. So do what now? Been watching a lot of Murder, She Wrote lately, good father? August 9th, 1908. Father O'Callahan is on a roll, apparently, in his sermon. Quote, called down the curse of God on the head of State's Attorney Healy. Also expressed the hope that the same divine curse would rest upon Healy's children. End quote. Apparently, the father isn't appreciating Healy's part in the prosecution of Billik, and as the attorney was defeated in trying to get renominated in the elections, the father is saying that the defeat was God's judgment against him for what he did to Billik. Father, you doing okay? August 27th, 1908. So I'm having a hard time following things now because the newspaper on this particular date has all kinds of things incorrect in here, but remember how Emma Vrzal Neiman's husband had died? Well, there's been an inquest about Herman Neiman, and Emma is appearing on her own behalf against the advice of her attorney. Whatever she said on the stand proves her innocent beyond a shadow of a doubt against killing her own husband. October 19th, 1908. U.S. Supreme Court has dismissed Herman's appeal, denying a petition of a writ of habeas corpus. They had appealed by saying he was denied the constitutional right by the failure of the trial court to ask him if he had anything to say about why he shouldn't get death. Because it's been dismissed, it's believed that's it. The sentence will stand, and he will be executed. He is supposed to die December 11th. November 29th, he received news that his mother had passed away. Quote, oh, my mother, if only I could go to her funeral. I knew my fate would kill her. I have lost everything now, and I feel sure they will hang me. I won't be able to see my wife or little girl anymore until Wednesday. End quote. Tired yet? Man, I'm the one telling this story, and I'm just about at my wit's end. Where are my throat lozenges? Okay, so guess what? Not gonna die December 11th. We have another reprieve until January 29th, 1909. Acting Governor Sherman has allowed the reprieve due to new and vital matters having come to the attention of the petitioner. Governor Deneen is still the governor, but is currently in Washington. Billik's attorney says that the new evidence will vindicate and free the defendant. So, it's 1909. Happy New Year. So let's see. Guess what? Remember that reprieve he had gotten until January 29th? Well, rather than going to get a noose around the neck, Governor Deneen has commuted the sentence to prison for life. So, yes, they think he still did it. They just aren't going to hang him for it. 5 times, or maybe 6, even the newspapers lost count, he was given a reprieve from execution. He's been through the criminal court system, appellate court system, state Supreme Court, federal district court, U.S. Supreme Court, Illinois State Board of Pardons. State attorney opposed a new trial for Billik, and in the next election, lost his nomination. Billik admitted that he had messed with the Vrzal family for years, that he had committed at least some form of hanky-panky with Mrs. Rose Vrzal, and that he had been the recipient of large sums of money from her, but he denied anything to do with the poisonings. His methods were giving love concoctions at the behest of the parents so that Emma, the eldest daughter, would get married, and that he had given harmless medications to Martin, the husband/father. Well, that ends the story. No, it doesn't. You think we're done? Oh, heck fire, no. We're getting there, summer raisins. So remember that Billik's mother had passed away while he was in prison, and he had blamed his unfortunate incarceration for possibly being the cause. Well, it's been learned that of her meager earnings, she had left nothing to her son. Well, sure, why would she leave money to someone who was a murderer? Well, she had cut him out of her will before all of this hullabaloo had happened. So we're leaving 1909 and leaping forward to December 1916. Herman still in prison. People still trying to get him out of prison. And in fact, coming up is a reopening of this case on a petition for the pardon of Herman Billik. There is still some speculation about how 2 of his previous wives had died under suspicious circumstances, but no one seems to be looking much into that. We're still looking at the murder he was charged with, Mary Vrzal, and the other 4. Allegedly, 2 days before Mary died, her mother had gotten some medicine from Billik, and Mary died actually allegedly in the arms of Billik from stomach trouble, just like her pa. They found 5 grains of arsenic in her stomach. 2 grains can kill a normal human being. Her life was insured for $800, which paid the funeral expenses, and Billik got the remainder from Mrs. Vrzal. And then more died, Billik allegedly obtaining most of the money. Mrs. Vrzal had allegedly offed herself, but some said that Billik was there, and before she died, he persuaded her to sell her house and give him the money. Despite all of this, Billik was said by others to have been the victim of circumstances. He admitted to being a cheap sham, playing with his victim's innocence. Our fiery Father O'Callahan is now working at the Catholic University of Washington. No doubt Billik owes him a great deal. January 4th, 1917. Herman Billik has officially been pardoned. Jerry Vrzal admitted to the board again that he lied on the stand. Herman is now out of prison. People seem delighted. Who isn't delighted? Emma and Bertha, two daughters who were not poisoned. They repudiated their brother Jerry's statements. Emma saying, quote, "I have nothing in my heart but bitterness for him," end quote. Well, yeah, because he also said you were a liar. Also not delighted, the original trial judge, Judge Barnes. State attorneys are already looking into the pardon. And hey, wedding bells are in the air. Wait, have you changed stories on us just when it's almost over? Oh dear, no. Guess who's getting hitched? Remember Edna, Herman's daughter, who threw herself literally at Governor Deneen to ask for help for her dad? And remember good old Jerry Vrzal, who committed perjury by lying to the court about his testimony, saying that Edna's dead allegedly poisoned his family? Yeah. No, seriously. I'm very serious. Herman said from Cleveland, where his wife and daughter have been living since he was in prison, quote, "The first thing I will do will be to give my blessing to Jerry and Edna. I fully forgive them for everything, and I can only thank him for the change of heart that has brought me freedom," end quote. So Herman served 10 years, now pardoned, said to have aged 20 years easily. He's now 50 and is said to look 70. So that was January, and now it's May 24th. Herman has died in the county hospital. If you believe him innocent, you can feel free to be sad that he tasted about 5 months of freedom, and that was it. If you believe him guilty, you may think it's karma. I, as usual in my wishy-washy way, don't know what to think. He admitted himself to not being the best of people, but not a poisoner. I don't know, though he and Father O'Callahan tried to accuse the eldest daughter. Why couldn't it have been the mother who had done it all? It was always believed she had ended her own life, and not until the police started looking into things, and not until Billik got arrested. Did she end her life out of fear? Guilt? Or was she truly just influenced by a sham of a man? And what happened at the beginning regarding the death of Mr. Standish York and his wife and Billik getting some of the money? Nothing that I can tell. Well, we went through a lot, didn't we? Feel free to go find a pillow and curl up for a nap. I'm going to go get a snack and a throat lozenge and figure out what bizarro story I'll bring you next week. See you.